Hello, this is chapter 4 over experiencing and expressing emotions. So let's get into it. So, emotional intelligence is something that it's actually kind of cool because when I first started teaching this, it wasn't as known or talked about. And now I'm sure y'all have heard of it at the very least. Maybe some of you have read books about it, done corporate training about it. So, we're going to delve just a little bit into it, but at the very basic level. So, what comprises emotional intelligence? These four things. So, understanding your own emotions, that's pretty self explanatory. Understanding why you feel the way you do, why you are experiencing those emotions, which is literally what I just said. Number two, seeing things from others' perspectives or practicing empathy. So that's another big one, being able to put ourselves in other people's shoes and try to comprehend what they're dealing with, what they're going through, etc. The ability to manage our emotions, and then the capability to harness our emotional states in ways that create competent decision making, communication, and relationship problem solving. So, this clip, you can watch it. It is from the movie Wolf of Wall Street, and it's the scene where Jordan Belfort is trying to motivate his workers. And when I teach in face to face or on Zoom, I play this for my students and I ask them, is this an example? Was he practicing emotional intelligence? And at first, it seems like a big fat no, right? Like he's screaming, he throws a watch and is like, hit him, but actually, when we break it down and go through all four of these, he actually is practicing emotional intelligence. He's understanding his emotions. He knows what he's trying to say. He's seeing things from others' perspectives, practicing empathy. You see this where he says, I've been a rich man and I've been a poor man and I choose rich every time. And he gives examples of like, is your girlfriend trying to kick you out because you're a worthless piece of crap or, whatever. And I'm editing myself because y'all know, if you've seen the movie, that he cusses a lot. Ability to manage our emotions. So that one, some students are like, he didn't manage it. But I would argue, even though it is a movie, I would argue he knew exactly what he was doing. And I think even though it seems like he was out of control, he actually knew exactly what he was doing and what he was aiming to use to motivate them. And it worked. And then the fourth one was there too. So the reason I give this example is because I think a lot of people probably think, when they think of emotional intelligence, they probably think of someone who's like cool, calm, and collected at all times, and it's just like, okay, hold on, let's think. And that might be the case sometimes, but emotional intelligence doesn't have to be calm. Okay, so there is that. Moving right along, managing experience and expression of emotion. This fascinates me still, even though I've taught this so many times, because I don't think a lot of people think about the fact that how do I say this? We don't always express emotions that we're experiencing. I think we think of like, oh yeah, but there's a lot of reasons why we don't, and I won't get into all of them, but it's interesting stuff. So let's talk about managing emotions. Emotion management, as you see right there, the definition, attempts to influence which emotions you have, when you have them, and how you experience and express them. So something to keep in mind, I don't think your textbook, and I'm certainly not saying that, you might have, sorry if you can hear my dog's bone across the floor. It's not saying that you're weak or you have to manage your emotions constantly. That's very much easier said than done. I have been the girl in a restaurant. They don't have them here. It's called Mi Cocina. Really good Mexican food. It's in Texas, and where I'm from. And I've been that girl crying at the table. I'm not proud of it. I hate getting emotional in front of people, but I had just gone through a breakup and my mom brought it up when we went to dinner and I was just emotional. So I get that emotional management when we are talking about like when you have the emotions and when you express them, it's a little bit easier said than done. So managing our emotions after they occur, I don't love that your textbook breaks this up into suppression and venting, because that makes it sound like that's the only way that we manage our emotions after they occur. But I'm just going to go with the textbook. So suppression is inhibiting thoughts, arousal. I'm reading my notes because I don't have this memorized. Arousal and outward behavioral displays of emotion. So you don't need to write this down, just listen and take it in. Sometimes it can happen because we realize that feeling, thinking, and openly communicating certain emotions would be relationally, socially, or culturally inappropriate. So a lot of times we suppress emotions because in that context, it might not be appropriate to express the emotions how we are experiencing them. And then this is most common for unavoidable and unwanted emotions. Duh, right? It's very rare that we would suppress positive and desired emotions. And then venting, your textbook defines it as allowing emotions to dominate our thoughts and explosively express them. Explosively sounds very aggressive, right? Like, I don't love, anyway, whatever. I don't need to give my opinion on the textbook. But venting is just, y'all know what venting is. It's just like letting it all out. Okay, so preventing emotions. I would bet, because I hadn't even thought of it before I taught this class, and before, I don't know why in grad school this never came up, or I don't remember it coming up. We actually prevent ourselves from feeling emotions, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, so I want to start there. So let's talk about the ways that we do this. I bet y'all didn't think about this, that we prevent ourselves from feeling emotions so that we don't have to feel them. Encounter avoidance is avoiding people, places, and activities that might elicit unwanted emotions. Okay. So let's say you and your partner just broke up and y'all would always go to Chipotle together. That was kind of like your place. Both of you liked it a lot. You might avoid going to that Chipotle. You might avoid it because, again, like I said in the definition, avoiding people, you don't want to run into your ex. Places that might, maybe just being there might elicit that emotion of missing them. So that's something that we often do. Encounter structuring is where I want to make sure I read this for you so that I get it right. Intentionally avoiding specific topics that you know will provoke unwanted emotion during encounters with others. So this is, okay, so let's say you were up for a promotion within your team and your boss sends out a mass email to your team at work and says like, hey, congrats, blah, 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 and you didn't get it. And everybody on your team knew that you really wanted it, you were going for it, whatever. You walk into, and you're like, I just don't want to, I just don't want to deal with the upsetting news and so you walk into the break room and you see another member that's on your team and so you're not avoiding them. That would be encounter avoidance. Encounter avoidance would be if you walk into the break room and they're like stirring their coffee or whatever, their back is to you, and you walk out. That would be encounter avoidance. Encounter structuring, you're not avoiding anybody. You're just structuring that encounter. So a way that we might do this is maybe you kind of dominate sounds negative, but maybe you dominate the conversation a little bit so that you don't give them room or time to bring it up and be like, hey, sorry, I heard about, so maybe you're like, yeah, what are you guys doing this weekend? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. All right, I got to run back to my desk. I got, a ton of stuff I have to do. I'll see you later. That way you kind of you structure that encounter to where the topic isn't going to come up to elicit that unwanted emotion that you don't want to feel. Okay. Attention focus is intentionally devoting your attention only to aspects of an event or encounter that you know will not provoke an undesired emotion. So your textbook gives this example. It's kind of silly. I'll give you another one if this doesn't resonate. So let's say you are seeing a speaker and it's like not for school, like you legit want to hear the speaker. You chose to go. And the person behind you is like clicking their pen or clicking their shoe. And you're like, I'm going to freak out. Maybe instead of letting that ruin your experience, you decide to hyper focus on the speaker. Let me give you another example. Let's say that you don't love your stepmom or your mom. I don't know why it has to be a step parent. You don't love your, I'll just stick with step parent, but I'm not hating on step parents like they're all bad. You don't love your stepmom. But your dad and your stepmom invite you to dinner, and you go and you put up with her because it's for your dad's sake. You love your dad, and it is what it is. Maybe you decide at that dinner you are going to hyper focus. Again, we're focusing our attention on something that will not provoke that unwanted emotion. So you focus on the food. You focus on the taste of the food. What did everybody order? That way, you don't have to get annoyed about stuff that your stepmom is saying. You don't even go there. Okay? So deactivation is the next one. I can't even talk, y'all. Holy moly. Systematically desensitizing yourself to an emotional experience. Okay? This experience is understandable, and this is word for word from your textbook, it can result in or trigger depression. So we have to be very careful. And again, it's understandable for trauma. It's understandable for maybe even like first responders. I have a lot of my military, my veterans that say that they've had to do this to be able to cope with things that they have gone through, experienced, had to do, etc. So this is sometimes, I don't even know if necessary would be fair to say, but it's not great, but it's understandable, but we just have to be careful about that. All right, reappraising our emotions. So reappraisal is basically reframing. It's basically reframing. We change how we think about the meaning of emotion eliciting situations so that their emotional impact is changed. Okay. So these next two parts I say about this, you don't need to write down, but just listen, just good to know, just background stuff. Reappraising our emotions is effective because you employ it before a full-blown emotional reaction occurs. And it actually takes less effort than trying to suppress or control our emotions after they've occurred. So as corny as this might sound to like, oh, just reevaluate and reframe it like that, but it really is effective. And it really is, it actually takes less energy, like I just said, than to manage than when we are actually already experiencing that emotion. The two steps to this is before or during an encounter that you believe will trigger an undesired emotion in yourself, think of the positive aspects of it. And then number 2 is consider the short-term and long-term consequences of your actions. Okay? So that is it for part 1. I'm going to cut it off there, and then we'll pick up with the rest in part 2.